بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم أما بعد. In this lesson we're going to begin الباب الرابع, the fourth subchapter, في صفة الحج والعمرة, in which we're going to be given a description of Hajj and Umrah. In this chapter, the authors are going to combine the arkan, the wajibat, the sunan in a methodic step-by-step manner. So this is probably going to be the best and easiest chapter in gaining an understanding of how we should perform Umrah and Hajj in line with the teaching of the Prophet ﷺ. The authors, they say, الأصل عند أهل العلم في صفة الحج حديث جابر المشهور. The basis amongst the people of knowledge in terms of evidence describing the Hajj of the Prophet ﷺ is the hadith of Jabir. And this is a famous hadith which the Sahabi Jabir ibn Abdullah, he goes into detail in describing the Hajj of the Prophet ﷺ. And this is the authentic hadith reported by Muslim. وقد تتبعنا الروايات الصحيحة الثابتة عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم فتلخص لنا من مجموعها الصفة التالية. And we have followed up the various reports which have authentically been reported from the Prophet ﷺ. فتلخص لنا من مجموعها الصفة التالية. And after combining all of these authentically reported narrations, we have come up with the following description. So they've mentioned a description of Hajj and Umrah, and because it's very long, we're going to split it into two parts. In this lesson, we're going to cover the part which speaks about Umrah, and then next lesson we're going to cover the part which speaks about Hajj, inshallah. So the authors, they say, إذا وصل مريد النسك إلى الميقات فإنه يستحب له أن يغتسل. Whoever seeks to perform Hajj or Umrah, upon arriving at the miqat, it's recommended for him to have a bath. It's sunnah before entering into the state of ihram that a person, he takes a bath. So you should do this at the miqat if you're going to stop there. But if you're not going to stop at the miqat, then you do it wherever you are going to assume the state of ihram. وَيَأْخُذَ مَا يَحْتَاجُ إِلَى أَخْذِهِ مِنْ شَعْرٍ. And likewise from the sunan also is that a person who removes any hair which requires removal, because when you enter into the state of ihram, you're not allowed to remove any hair after that. يَحِلُّ أَخْذُهُ, hair which is permissible for you to remove. So this excludes the beard. The beard, it's haram for a man to remove any part of it. So which types of hair is permissible for one to remove? كَشَعْرِ الْإِبِطِ وَالْعَانَةِ وَالشَّارِبِ, such as the armpit hair, the pubic hair, and the moustache. وَيُقَلِّمُ أَظَافِرَهُ. And likewise, if you need to, you can trim your nails now, because after you've assumed ihram, you're not allowed to trim your nails, as we've mentioned previously. وَيَتَجَرَّدَ الرَّجُلُ مِنَ الْمَخِيطِ. Then men, they have to remove any fitted clothing before assuming the state of ihram. Fitted clothing such as socks, such as trousers, shirts, vests, jackets, thawbs, and so on. وَيَتَطَيَّبَ فِي بَدَنِهِ قَبْلَ نِيَّةِ الدُّخُولِ فِي النُّسُكِ. And likewise it's sunnah that they perfume themselves on their body, hair, beards, before entering into the state of ihram, before making the intention to enter into the state of ihram. You have to make sure that the perfume does not go on your clothing of ihram. If it does, then you have to wash it off before entering into the state of ihram. وَيَلْبَسَ الرَّجُلُ إِزَارًا وَرِدَاءً نَظِيفَيْنِ أَبْيَضَيْنِ. So after the men have removed fitted clothing, it's recommended for them to cover themselves using two sheets. The one which covers the upper half is called الرِّدَاء, and the one which covers the lower half is called izar. And both of these two sheets should be clean and white in color. This is the sunnah. وَتُحْرِمُ الْمَرْأَةُ فِي مَا شَاءَتْ مِنْ ثِيَابٍ. As for women, then they enter into the state of ihram wearing whatever clothing they wish to wear. These clothing obviously must be concealing and conform to the sharia. And the women, they are not allowed to wear niqab. They're not allowed to cover their faces with any face coverings, niqab, burqa, even face masks. And likewise, their hands are not allowed to be covered using gloves. So they will use alternative methods to cover their faces and hands in the presence of strange men, as we've mentioned previously. وَيُغَطِّ الرَّجُلُ كَتِفَيْهِ بِرِدَائِهِ. The man, he should cover both of his shoulders using the rida, the upper half covering. It's a common misconception that men think that it's sunnah to uncover the right shoulder throughout the Umrah or throughout the Hajj. What's correct is that the sunnah is to uncover the right shoulder only when you're performing tawaf for Umrah or tawaf al-qudum, which is the tawaf upon arrival, as we're going to elaborate inshallah. So you should cover both of your shoulders. وَيُهِلُّ بِنُسُكِهِ الَّذِي يُرِيدُ. And then you do ihlal, which is to raise your voice, mentioning whichever type of nusuk you intend to perform. So if you intend to perform a Umrah, you would say لبيك اللهم عمرة. If you intend to perform Hajj alone, you'd say لبيك اللهم حجة. If you intend to combine Umrah and Hajj, you would say لبيك اللهم عمرة وحجة. So ihlal is to mention the type of ritual you intend to perform. And this is sunnah. If you do not say this, then your Hajj is still valid. In fact, all of the phrases that we're going to mention, all of the sayings, the adhkar, the ad'iyah, the supplications that come in association with Umrah or Hajj, they are all sunnah. They are all sunnah. If you do not say anything from the start of your Umrah till the end, or from the start of your Hajj till the end, your Umrah and Hajj is still valid. But you're going to be missing out on a great deal of reward. So it's important to note that, because some people might think, I haven't said this at this point, I haven't said this, is my Hajj valid? Is my Umrah valid? Yes, it's still valid, because all of the sayings are sunnah. It's important to bear this in mind. وَالْأَفْضَلُ أَنْ يَكُونَ إِهْلَالُهُ إِذَا اسْتَوَى عَلَى دَابَتِهِ. And it's best that the ihlal takes place while a person has mounted his riding beast, his mode of transportation. Once he has mounted, that's when you should do the ihlal. You should say لبيك اللهم عمرة and so on. وإن كان المحرم يخاف من عائق يمنعه من إتمام نسكه كمرض أو قطع طريق أو نحو ذلك فإنه يشترط أن محلي حيث حبستني. If the pilgrim, he fears that he is going to be obstructed from completing his Umrah or Hajj due to sickness or something coming on the route which will prevent him, or anything else, then he should make a condition saying محلي حيث حبستني. My final point is wherever you stop me, meaning I am going to continue with my Umrah and Hajj unless something comes to prevent me from continuing. And the benefit of making this condition is, we mentioned previously that if you are muhsar, if you are obstructed from completing your Umrah or Hajj, it's wajib upon you to offer a sacrifice before you exit the state of Ihram. If you make this condition, that obligation is uplifted, so you don't have to sacrifice anything. And this should be done before you enter into the state of Ihram. وَيُسْتَحَبُّ أَن يَكُونَ عِنْدَ إِهْلَالِهِ مُسْتَقْبِلًا لِلْقِبْلَةِ. And it's also recommended that when you're making the ihlal, after you've mounted the riding beast, you face the qibla, and you should say اللهم هذه حجة لا رياء فيها ولا سمعة. Oh Allah, this Hajj is solely for you. I am not doing it to be seen, nor am I doing it to be heard or praised. ويشرع في التلبية. Now the pilgrim, he begins saying the talbiyah, which is لبيك اللهم لبيك لبيك لا شريك لك لبيك إن الحمد والنعمة لك والملك لا شريك لك. This is the talbiyah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. وكان الصحابة يزيدون. The companions, they used to add other words of praise alongside this, such as لبيك ذا المعارج لبيك ذا الفواضل. This is something which the Prophet ﷺ endorsed. So there's room for maneuver here. You can say what the Prophet ﷺ said, you can also add what the Sahaba added. However, it's best to just say what the Prophet ﷺ said, because his guidance was the best of guidance. وَيُسَنُّ أَن يَرْفَعَ صَوْتَهُ بِالتَّلْبِيَةِ. And it's recommended to raise one's voice when saying the talbiyah, to say the talbiyah out loud. But women, they should lower their voices. فإذا وصل مكة استحب له أن يغتسل. Upon arriving in Mecca, it's recommended once again to take another shower, to take another ghusl. فإذا أراد أن يطوف اطبع الرجل بأن يكشف عن كتفه الأيمن. So when the man is now ready to perform tawaf, he should perform the sunnah of al-ittiba'. The sunnah of al-ittiba' is to uncover the right shoulder. Now this is where you implement the sunnah. You uncover the right shoulder when you are about to begin the tawaf. وَيُغَطِّي كَتِفَهُ الْأَيْسَرَ بِرِدَائِهِ. So the right shoulder is going to be exposed while the left shoulder is covered using the rida. ويشترط أن يكون حال الطواف متوضئا. And it's a condition that when you're performing tawaf, you have wudu. So if you do invalidate your wudu, what you would do is you would go and make wudu and come back and continue from the same position that you stopped. You don't have to restart. So if you did 3 and then you invalidated your wudu, you'd go make wudu and come back and continue from 3. And at the start of each circuit, it's recommended to do istilam. It's recommended to do istilam by one of 4 methods. The first one and the best one is to go and kiss the black stone directly. You kiss the black stone at the start of each circuit directly if you're able. فَإِن لَمْ يُمْكِنْهُ ذَلك. If you're not able to do that, استلمه بيده. You do istilam by touching it with your hand. So you extend your hand and you touch the black stone. وَقَبَّلَ يَدَهُ. Then you kiss your hand. This is the second form of doing istilam. فَإِن لَمْ يُمْكِنْهُ ذَلك يُشِيرُ إِلَيْهِ بِيَدِهِ. If you're not able to do that, then you just point in the direction of the black stone. وَلَا يُقَبِّلُهَا. And you don't need to kiss your hand in this case. And the fourth form, which they have not mentioned, is to point in the direction of the black stone with a stick, if you have a stick. And you don't need to kiss the stick. So there's 4 forms of performing istilam, and this is done at the start of each circuit. All of these things are sunan, as we mentioned, exposing the right arm and performing the istilam at the start of each circuit. This is sunnah. And in most cases, you will not be able to implement this sunnah unless you go out of your way. And in most cases, you're going to cause harm and hurt other Muslims, in which case it's haram for you to implement this sunnah. Anytime where a sunnah is going to be implemented where you're going to cause harm to another Muslim, then it's wajib upon you to leave off that sunnah and not do it, because causing harm is haram, whereas this is a sunnah. If you leave it off, then there's no sin upon you. وَيَفْعَلُ ذَلِكَ عِنْدَ كُلِّ شَوْطٍ. As we've mentioned, the istilam, you do that at the start of every circuit. وَيَبْدَأُ كُلُّ شَوْطٍ بِالتَّكْبِيرِ. And likewise, when you begin every circuit, it's recommended to say Allahu Akbar. Every time you begin a new circuit, you should say Allahu Akbar. وَإِنِ ابْتَدَأَ الطَّوَافَ بِبِسْمِ اللَّهِ وَاللَّهُ أَكْبَرْ فَحَسَنْ. And if you say Bismillah, Allahu Akbar, that's also good. What's correct is that the addition of Bismillah has not authentically come from the Prophet ﷺ. This is something which Ibn Umar used to do. It's authentically reported from Ibn Umar. As for the Prophet ﷺ, then he used to say Allahu Akbar. So we should just say Allahu Akbar at the start of each circuit. وَإِذَا أَتَى الرُّكْنَ الْيَمَانِ اسْتَلَمَهُ وَلَمْ يُقَبِّلْهُ. Likewise, when you come to the Yemeni Corner, the Kaaba has 4 sides, like it's like a cube. So if the black stone is here, the Yemeni Corner would be the one just before it. So you're coming round, you're gonna come past the Yemeni Corner is here. It's also recommended to do istilam of the Yemeni Corner. This is what they're saying here. An istilam of the Yemeni Corner is just to touch it with your hand. To touch it with your hand. If you're not able, then you don't do anything else. And when you touch it with your hand, you don't need to kiss your hands, nor do you need to go and kiss the Yemeni Corner itself. فَإِن لَمْ يُمْكِنْهُ اسْتِلَامُهُ فَإِنَّهُ لَا يُشِيرُ إِلَيْهِ. If you're not able to do istilam, you don't point in its direction, and you don't say Allahu Akbar when you come to the Yemeni Corner. Allahu Akbar is when you're crossing the black stone at the start of each circuit. That's when you say Allahu Akbar. As for the Yemeni Corner, you don't say Allahu Akbar. وَيَقُولُ بَيْنَ الرُّكْنَيْنِ. And you say between the 2 pillars, وَهُمَا الرُّكْنُ الْيَمَانِ وَالْحَجَرُ الْأَسْوَدِ, which are the Yemeni Corner and the black stone. So this is the Yemeni Corner and this is the black stone. You're going to go past this area. When you go past this area, you should say رَبَّنَا آتِنَا فِي الدُّنْيَا حَسَنَةً وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ حَسَنَةً وَقِنَا عَذَابَ النَّارِ. O Allah, give us the best of this world and the best of the hereafter, and protect us from the punishment of the hellfire. This is, as we mentioned, something which is recommended. If you do not do it, it will not have any effect on the validity of your Umrah or your Hajj. وَيَدْعُو فِي بَقِيَّةِ الطَّوَافِ بِمَا شَاءَ. During the tawaf, you should make dua and you should be engaged in adhkar and supplication as much as possible. You should avoid idle talk, wasting time, and so on. So when you get to between the Yemeni Corner and the black stone, it's رَبَّنَا آتِنَا فِي الدُّنْيَا حَسَنَةً وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ حَسَنَةً وَقِنَا عَذَابَ النَّارِ. You keep repeating that. And then elsewhere, you can engage in whatever adhkar and du'as you wish to engage in. ويستحب أن يرمل في الأشواط الثلاثة الأولى والرمل فوق المشي ودون العدو. And it's recommended for men to do a ramal in the first 3 circuits. When they perform in tawaf, the first 3 circuits, you should do a ramal. Ramal is a pace faster than walking and slower than running. So you're taking quick, short steps. And this is sunnah if you're able to implement it. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of overcrowding. There's going to be a lot of overcrowding, no space to probably implement this sunnah. وَيَمْشِي فِي الْأَرْبَعِ. So you perform a ramal in the first 3, and in the remaining 4, you should just continue walking as normal. And this is for men, as we said. فَإِذَا أَتَمَّ 7 أَشْوَاطٍ غَطَّى كَتِفَيْهِ بِرِدَائِهِ. After completing 7 circuits, you should now cover both of your shoulders. The shoulder, the right shoulder that was exposed during tawaf, now is going to be covered because you're going to offer prayer. Before we continue with the next step, it's important to mention that for the tawaf to be valid, there are several conditions which the scholars have mentioned. The first of these conditions is that you make intention. You have to have intention that you're performing tawaf. The second condition is that you perform 7 full circuits. You have to perform 7 full circuits. If you forget, then you go back to what you're certain of. So if you're in doubt, have I performed 4 or 3? You go according to what we are certain of, which is 3, and then you build on from that. Likewise, from the conditions is that every circuit starts from the black stone and ends at the black stone. So imagine the black stone is here. I would come and start from here and then go around, and then that's my first circuit. If someone comes and then starts his circuit from here and then goes round, this circuit is not going to be counted because it didn't start from the black stone. It's supposed to start from the black stone. Also from the conditions is that when you perform tawaf, you do it anti-clockwise. So the Kaaba should be on your left side. You're going round anti-clockwise. If you go clockwise, then it's not going to be accepted. Also from the conditions is to go around the Kaaba. So there is a part of the Kaaba which is the semicircle, which is called al-Hijr. If you go in between the Hijr, then you have not gone around the Kaaba, because the Hijr is part of the original foundation of the Kaaba. So you make sure to go around that part. If you take a shortcut and go in between the Hijr, then that circuit is not counted. And this are some of the conditions which the scholars have mentioned, alongside having tahara, being in a state of purity. And some of the scholars, they said that it's major impurity which is a condition. As for the minor impurity, if a person does not have wudu, then it's valid. However, just to be on the safe side, a person should have wudu. So after completing the tawaf, ثم نفذ إلى مقام إبراهيم فقرأ واتخذوا من مقام إبراهيم مصلى. A person now goes on to the next stage, which is to go to the maqam of Ibrahim. The maqam of Ibrahim is the stone on which Ibrahim stood to build the Kaaba. And when you're going there, you recite the ayah in Surah Al-Baqarah, ayah 125, وَاتَّخِذُوا مِن مَقَامِ إِبْرَاهِيمَ مُصَلَّى. Allah says, and take from maqam Ibrahim a place of prayer. ويصلي ركعتين خلف المقام يقرأ في الأولى بسورة الكافرون وفي الثانية بسورة الإخلاص. And this is a voluntary 2-unit prayer that you're going to offer after tawaf. In the first unit, you're going to read Surah Al-Fatiha and Surah Al-Kafirun. And in the second unit, you read Surah Al-Fatiha and Surah Al-Ikhlas, قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ. And you should offer this prayer behind Maqam Ibrahim. So Maqam Ibrahim is going to be between you and the Kaaba. This is if you're able. If you're not able, فَإِن لَمْ يَتَمَكَّنْ مِنَ الصَّلَاةِ خَلْفَ الْمَقَامِ لِزِحَامٍ وَنَحْوِهِ. If you're unable to perform the salah behind Maqam Ibrahim because of overcrowding or other reasons, صَلَّى فِي أَيِّ مَكَانٍ مِنَ الْمَسْجِدِ. You pray anywhere inside the masjid. You can offer these 2 units anywhere inside the masjid, which is going to be the case for most people, because there's a lot of overcrowding and sometimes the security do not allow you to pray directly behind it because people are going to be performing tawaf. وهذا الطواف هو طواف القدوم للمفرد والقارن وطواف العمرة للمتمتع. And this tawaf that we've just completed is considered as tawaf al-qudum, the tawaf upon arrival in the case of the mufrid and the qarin. So the mufrid and the qarin, in their case is Tawaf al-Qudum. And we mentioned previously that this Tawaf in their case is Sunnah. However, for the Mutamatti', this Tawaf goes towards their Umrah. This is a pillar from the pillars of Umrah. ثُمَّ يُشْرَعُ لَهُ أَن يَشْرَبَ مِن زَمْزَمٍ. So after completing the Tawaf, it's recommended for a person to drink Zamzam. It's Sunnah to drink Zamzam. وَيَصُبَّ عَلَى رَأْسِهِ, and to pour some of the Zamzam on one's head. ثُمَّ يَرْجِعُ إِلَى الْحَجَرِ الْأَسْوَدِ. After drinking Zamzam, you should return back to the black stone. فَيَسْتَلِمَهُ إِن تَيَسَّرَ, and you perform Istilam once again if you're able. Most cases, after drinking Zamzam, going through the crowd to touch the black stone is going to be very difficult. So the next stage is performing as-sa'i, going between the two mounts of Safa and Marwa. ثُمَّ يَخْرُجُ إِلَى الصَّفَا, then you go to the Mount as-Safa. وَيَقْرَأُ قَوْلَ اللَّهِ عَزَّ وَجَلَّ, and while you're going, you recite the saying of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, إِنَّ الصَّفَا وَالْمَرْوَةَ مِن شَعَائِرِ اللَّهِ. Indeed, the mounts of Safa and Marwa are from the symbols of Allah. Ayah 158 of Surah Al-Baqarah. Then you ascend. ثُمَّ يَرْقَى الصَّفَا حَتَّى يَرَى الْبَيْتِ. Then you ascend Mount Safa until you see the Kaaba. وَيَسْتَقْبِلَ الْقِبْلَةِ, and you face the Qibla. Upon ascending, while you're on top of Safa, you face the Qibla. يَرْفَعُ يَدَيْهِ, and you raise your hands. If you're not able to see the Qibla directly, then you just face in this direction, and then you raise your hands, and you say Allahu Akbar thalathan. You say Allahu Akbar 3 times. Then you say La ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lahu lahul mulku wa lahul hamdu wa ala kulli shay'in qadir. La ilaha illallah wahdahu anjaza wa'dahu wa nasara 'abdahu wa hazama al-ahzaba wahdah. ويفعل ذلك 3 مرات ويدعو بينها طويلا. So after saying Allahu Akbar 3 times and then La ilaha illallah, you make dua. You make dua for some time. Then you repeat it again, and then you make dua, then you repeat it again, then you make dua. So you repeat this process 3 times. You say Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, La ilaha illallah, then you make dua. Then you say Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, La ilaha illallah, the dua here, and then you make dua. And then you do that again, and then you make dua. So, Allahu Akbar, Allah is the greatest. La ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lah. There is none worthy of worship except Allah alone. He has no partners. Lahul mulku, to him belong the dominion. Wa lahul hamdu, and to him belong all praise. Wa huwa ala kulli shay'in qadir, and he is able to do all things. La ilaha illallah, there is none worthy of worship except Allah. Wahdahu, alone. Anjaza wa'dahu, he fulfilled his promise. Wa nasara 'abdahu, and he aided his servant. Wa hazama al-ahzaba wahdahu, and he defeated the confederates alone. And then you make dua, and then you repeat this, as we mentioned. ثُمَّ يَنْزِلُ مَاشِيًا إِلَى الْمَرْوَةِ. Then you come down walking towards Marwa, which is the other mount. وَيَسْعَى بَيْنَ الْمِيلَيْنِ الْأَخْضَرَيْنِ سَعْيًا شَدِيدًا. However, when you reach the green lamp that's going to be above you, you run very fast. You run very fast until you come across the next green light. There's going to be 2 green lights above you. When you go past the first one, you run very fast until you go and cross the second one. وَذَلِكَ لِلرِّجَالِ دُونَ النِّسَاءِ, and this is for men, not women. ثُمَّ يَمْشِي حَتَّى يَرْقَى الْمَرْوَةِ. Once you go past the second light, you continue walking then. After you finish running, you continue walking as usual until you ascend Marwa. You ascend Marwa. فَيَصْنَعُ عَلَيْهَا مِثْلَ مَا صَنَعَ عَلَى الصَّفَا. Then you do what you did at Marwa in terms of doing the dua, facing the Qibla, raising your hands, Allahu Akbar 3 times, La ilaha illallah, making dua and repeating that 3 times. You do the same each time you go to one side of the mount. Each mount you ascend, you do that 3 times. It's sunnah to do that. If you don't do that and you just walk from one side to the other, your sa'i is going to be valid, but you've missed out on a great deal of reward. وَهَذَا شَوْط, and this is a circuit. So going from Safa to Marwa is considered a shawt, a circuit, and then going back is considered another circuit. ثُمَّ مِنَ الْمَرْوَةِ إِلَى الصَّفَا شَوْطٌ آخَرٌ, and then going from Marwa back to Safa, this is another circuit. حَتَّى يُتِمَّ سَعْيَ سَبْعَةَ أَشْوَاط, until you complete 7 circuits. So if you imagine this is the 2 mounts, Marwa, and this is Safa. So you're going to begin at Safa, and then you go to Marwa, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So you start at Safa and you end at Marwa. So this is the sa'i. And the scholars, they've mentioned several conditions for the sa'i to be valid. From the conditions is that you have intention. You have to have intention that when you're going past these two mounts, in between these two mounts, this is your sa'i. The second condition is that you perform a sa'i after you've completed tawaf. It should not be before a tawaf, it should be after. Likewise, from the conditions is that you begin the sa'i at Safa. If you begin at Marwa and then you go to Safa, that circuit is not going to be valid. So it has to begin at Safa. And likewise, from the conditions is that you have to do 7 circuits, and each circuit has to go the full distance. You can't just go and stop in between or halfway and then come back. It has to go the full distance from Safa to Marwa. وَهَذَا سَعْيُ الْحَجِّ لِلْمُفْرِدِ وَالْقَارِنِ. In terms of the mufrid and the qarin, this, if they do perform sa'i now, this is going to count towards their sa'i for hajj. The mufrid and the qarin, they only have to perform one sa'i. Only one sa'i. And they have two opportunities to perform this sa'i. They either perform it now after Tawaf al-Qudum, or if they do not perform it now, they have the other opportunity, which is to perform it after Tawaf al-Ifada. There's another tawaf that's going to come. If they perform sa'i now, they don't have to perform it later. But if they don't perform it now, they have to perform it later. So there's one sa'i that's due upon them. وَلَا يَتَحَلَّلَانِ بَعْدَهُ. And likewise, after this, they don't come out of the state of ihram. The mufrad and the qarin, they remain in the state of ihram until they've completed hajj. بَلْ يَبْقَيَانِ بِإِحْرَامِهَا. They remain in the state of ihram. وَهُوَ سَعْيُ الْعُمْرَةِ لِلْمُتَمَتِّعِ. As for the mutamatti', this sa'i that they've performed, this is going to be the sa'i for Umrah. Because from the pillars of Umrah is that you perform tawaf and you perform sa'i. So the tawaf that they've done now and the sa'i that they've done now is going to count towards their Umrah. They will have to perform another tawaf and another sa'i for hajj, which we're going to describe and speak about next lesson, inshallah. ويتحلل المتمتع من عمرته بتقصير شعره ثم يلبس ملابسه. So after completing the sa'i in the case of the mutamatti', now he can come out of the state of ihram by shortening his hair. And then he can continue wearing his normal clothing. He's finished Umrah. Now everything that was haram for him in the state of ihram becomes halal upon him. And the reason why they've said shortening the hair, this is not always the case. If there's a long gap between Umrah and Hajj, then it's recommended to shave the head. If the gap is long enough for hair to grow back on the head, then you should shave your head after Umrah, and then you should shave your head once again after Hajj. But if the gap between Umrah and Hajj is short, then here you should trim your hair so that there's some hair remaining on your head so that you can shave it after Hajj. So after you've completed this, the mutamatti', he comes out of the state of ihram and he waits until the next stage, which we're going to speak about in the next lesson. Barakallahu fikum. Subhanakallahumma bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik.